After making a journey of almost 300 kilometers across Europe, the Danube River completes its journey. It flows into the Black Sea through several arms of a huge flat delta. Together with channels, inland waters, and a 2-kilometer strip deep into the Black Sea, it covers an area spanning more than 49,000 hectares. The Danube Delta is considered the largest wetland complex in Europe. This is an edge whose appearance is constantly changing. As a result of the battle between two elements, water and land, new islands, rivers, lakes, and swamps appear. The landscape of the delta is transformed every year. The waters of the Danube bring a large amount of suspended solids, which are deposited in the mouths of the delta's arms. Each year, the size of the land increases by around 30 square meters, and so the territories that man develops expand over time. We're on the Kelly arm of the river Danube. From the right, it opens to the Romanian part of the Danube Delta, and on the left we can see the 18-kilometer of the Danube Delta. The city of Vilkova is located at the 17 to 19-kilometer part of the Danube. Ahead of us, we can see the fork from which the city got its name. Here, the Kelly arm splits off into three. Today, it is difficult to imagine that 400 years ago, just reed marshes and the Kelly Delta were to be found at the location where the city is now. Its land part had only just begun to be built. These places were fertile for birds, fish, and wetland vegetation. By the way, people came here through forced circumstances.
In the
middle of the 17th century, Patriarch Nikon conducted church reform with the support of the king. Those people who did not want to accept these changes became known as Old Believers and were severely persecuted. They were called schismatics and were prepared for self-immolation just to ensure that nothing was changed in their church canons, customs and traditions. Vilkova was founded in the Danube floods, and when the first settlers arrived there, were just swampy places here. But people needed to settle in them. They became resourceful at mastering the marshes. In order to build at least some kind of dwelling, break a garden or a vegetable garden, they had to first form an artificial island. The building material was taken right there while digging a canal. So each family built an island of silt. They were connected by bridges, and instead of roads, they laid masonry in the form of wooden pavements on piles. It's estimated that Ukrainian Venice is located on 72 small and large islands that encircle 46 kilometers of water channels. Vilkova is situated in such a way that the small streets on the left make up Rybachi Canal Street. Small streets run through the main channel, bypass one, 2 quarters and return here. All these streets of Vilkova are connected to the main water artery. Belgorod Canal is not only a waterway, for many people it is access to technical water and drinking water.
Для многих людей доступ и к технической воде, и к питьевой.
Each family in Vilkova has its own watercraft. This is the only possible form of transport in the city. 3,000 boats leave their moorings and, observing the traffic rules, set off on their journey through the city's channels. Wooden pavements, masonry designed for pedestrians. Walking just like in an ordinary city, you can admire flower beds on the water's surface, which don't need to be watered. The life of local inhabitants is connected with water, which not only waters them but also feeds them. To this day, fishing in Vilkova is the main business, and 1 in every 10 of the city's residents is a fisherman. Now the famous Danube herring is rising from the Black Sea to the Danube for caviar. Fishermen are catching fish at this moment. The first settlers went far out to the sea in small boats without engines and did not always return. That's why fishermen never went fishing without first getting a church blessing. They asked for the protection of Saint Mykola, the patron of fishermen, sailors and travelers. The Church of Saint Mykola in Vilkovo managed to survive even brutal times of persecution against the church. The fishermen's faith in their patron was very strong.
Да, вот были здесь при Румынии купцы, которые принимали рыбу, были хозяева, которые...
It was fishing in the main that helped to survive. There were merchants and owners who took fish, who stood firmly in their feet. They hired fishing gear and boats, and ordinary citizens worked for 50%.
50% они получали два человека, которые работали, 50% брал хозяин. Вот они этим выходили-то. В основном, если поймали хорошую рыбу, белугу, допустим.
If they caught good fish, beluga for example, so the winter period was good and they could live well for a year. Caviar was prized by Romania.
Осетровая очень дорого стоила.
The Shvets family moved to the island of the Danube Delta in the beginning of the last century, when this territory belonged to Romania. The grandfather had 7 children, says Alexander. They worked hard, although not all cultures gave a good harvest.
Здесь была плавня, они этот кусок огородили.
Here they mowed reeds and manually piled up such mounds using shovels.
Набрасывали бугры такие. И на этих буграх сажали.
And they planted pumpkin and corn on these hills.
Кукурузу.
Waterlogging is a risky way to go about agriculture. The abundance of water causes floods in spring, as the level of water in channels rises and floods the plots, while the channels dry out in summer. In such case, they have to be deepened again by shoveling sludge away until water appears and once again fills up the channels.
Вот этот елики все копаются лопатой.
These channels are dug using shovels, and the earth is discarded. The grapes are then scattered around all the plots as fertilizer.
Разбрасывать идет как удобрение. Немножко раньше, лет 5-6 тому назад, и была большая засуха.
About 5 or 6 years ago, there was a big drought. They dried out and had to be dug out again using shovels. And in the space of a year, from August to October, I had dug out 900 meters of this soil.
Сколько кубов уже, я не знаю, но я говорю, примерно 900 погодных метров.
Planting trees and tending to gardens is not easy for the inhabitants of these islands, as sometimes it takes hard, exhausting work. And building a house from the resources that are available also takes ingenuity and resourcefulness. Silt, reeds, shells, and wood for the frame. These building materials turned out to be sufficient for building houses to live in.
Вот этот дом, он сделан из тростника.
This house is made of reeds. Reeds are attached to a wooden frame, then doped on both sides and whitened. We plastered it after our father, because it needs daubing and whitening every year.
Гладится, белится, и это готово тебе. Но это мы уже после отца уже взяли поштукатурили, потому что каждый год нужно его чинковать, его гладить, белить.
But it's a big thermos, and reeds hold it together. Come in, it's cool inside.
Сейчас в дом зайдите, в доме прохладно.
Reeds are the main component, and it's still popular in the construction of local dwellings. Today, it is being exported to Holland and Germany as roofing material. The technology of making bricks from silt, which was used by the old believers in the construction of the furnace, also came in handy for modern-day people. They shape the bricks and dry them in the sun. They undergo natural firing when the oven is stoked for the first time. The building material becomes flame-resistant, and the oven preserves heat for a long time.
It's
a great help for us because we have no stores here, and we have to go to Vilkovo to get bread. So we've built a stove here. Thankfully, there are lots of reeds here. These Russian stoves were passed on from the old believers. These were runaway old believers who fled from Russia. This shape of the oven remained the same after being passed down from generation to generation. Solar panels compensate for the absence of electricity. When winter comes, they use coal and firewood for heating. Locals plant trees on their plots specifically with this in mind.
Это у нас
I plant willows on the left side here. I use them for firewood. Felling trees in the forest for firewood is forbidden.
Здесь мы заготовка ведем дров, потому что дрова тоже здесь на островах. Лесничество нельзя вырубывать.
By adapting themselves to an autonomous lifestyle, the islanders adjusted their everyday life and provided themselves with flood and water in such a way as not to depend on the mainland.
Ловим рыбу.
We catch fish, salt it for a couple of days, then soak it in running water and hang it on the drying rack. The rack we have is pretty good. Flies can't get it, and the fish tastes great. Sometimes we use it for snacks. Whilst walking through this plot of land, its owner is proud to demonstrate his personal success in gardening and viticulture.
Виноград это у нас называется новак. Такой виноград растет только у нас и какой-то.
The vineyard is starting to ripen. This grape variety is called Novak. It only grows here and in some region of France.
Вот в наших, хотя бы в наших районах и в Измаильском районе уже вкус не тот, потому что его вкус за счет грунта.
The soil affects its taste. The taste of the soil makes it more fragrant. Such grapes only grow around here, where we live.
Ну нету пахучести в нем, понимаете? Вот только в наших местах он такой виноград растет.
Possessing the knowledge of their ancestors, current-day islanders no longer try to get rich harvests of wheat, maize, and vegetables on these beds of silts. By trial and error, they have managed to discover those few cultures whose cultivation is both justified and profitable.
Вот клубничка у нас здесь растет, но это не зорница, это клэри.
I have half of hectare of land. We practice on grapes and garden crops, apples, pears. Here we grow some strawberries too. It's a little sour, but it looks nice.
И она у нее внешний вид очень такой красивый, но она кисловатая.
Vilkave was once the largest supplier of strawberries. The sweetest and most environmentally friendly berries were grown here. The varieties that took root in the silty, fertile land were resistant to parasites and needed no chemical treatment. The residents of Vilkave also became successful at gardening. Varieties of apple with shallow root systems take root well in silt soil and bear plenty of fruit. Mihailo has been into gardening for 15 years. He's planted his third garden and got a rich harvest. He takes care of around 500 trees, and not a single one is left without attention. There used to be a garden on the island of Ankudinov, but it does not pay to go there by boat every year. It's fairly expensive, but here it's pretty close, so I can take a scooter or a car there. I bought the car specifically to be able to go there at any time. This is a young garden. Mihailo learns the ins and outs of gardening on his own. Most often he turns to the internet or experienced gardeners in nurseries for help. There are subtleties like in any business, but when you want to grow a garden on the river, you need to take into account the unique features of the local land. There's nothing complicated here. Just a garter. Pull the branch away a bit so that the sun shines inside, and the apples will look much nicer. Such an individual approach to each apple tree requires strength and devotion. Diligence is a hereditary trait that is passed from one generation to another by the islanders at genetic level. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to create this many man-made islands and build a whole city that's been flourishing for 3 centuries. But Vilkave and the neighboring islands that are inhabited remain quiet, hidden in the Danube swamps and reed beds. Here, man and nature exist in harmony, and natural wetland reaches are treated with particular care. So travel with us and discover unexplored Ukraine.